Hello everyone, it's Steenberg Avenue, I'm Eric. This past December, I had the incredible opportunity to visit Wiener Prater in Vienna, Austria, a very old amusement park with what I consider the scariest rides I've ever been on. I know most of my audience is American, and when many of you think of European parks, you think of top-notch theming, better than US parks in fact, with places like Europa Park and Phantasialand in Germany setting that precedent. However, Europe is not devoid of parks that are closer to the amusement park definition, with Wiener Prater being a perfect example. In fact, it doesn't even feel like an amusement park. Prater feels like a carnival, which is basically an amusement park, but the key difference is that it feels temporary. It seems like everything there, save for a few restaurants and other buildings, could easily be relocated. This actually is the case, since many rides just get shipped there for a year and leave again. So this is basically a massive year-round carnival. In terms of US amusement parks, I most compare it to Knoebels or Riot Playland. They have similar attraction offerings and all have lively atmospheres, but my experience at Prater was surreal compared to any American park. Maybe it's unique to Prater, maybe not, but the ride collection here was just bizarre. Some rides were downright terrifying to me, and I had just as much fun as the best amusement parks in the US as a result. The entire experience was nothing like anything I'd done before, thanks to that combination of crazy rides. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 7 rides I experienced at Wiener Prater, starting with the least scary, and ending with what I consider the scariest ride in the world. These rides are surreal, but we must begin with the least surreal of them. That is Dizzy Mouse. It's a spinning wild mouse by manufacturer Reverchon, and I certainly liked it, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. The sign just says Dizzy and doesn't really look like a mouse, so that's kind of funny for a start. The ride actually begins with a standard hairpin turn, like any other wild mouse coaster, but the spinning ones are not as painful as other wild mouse coasters because you don't get slammed into the side as much. Then, there's 2 drops, as well as a crazy double up that throws you out of your seat. And at this point, the spinning begins. This spinning was madness when I rode. The car was just non-stop, and it culminated in a dip into a cat-themed tunnel and a final pop of airtime. Spinning wild mouse coasters can be kind of insane, and this ride proves that. I find the experience very similar to Raging Cajun at the soon-to-be-gone Six Flags America, even though the rides were made by different companies. This was a lot of fun. I was definitely ad-libbing galore with my party while we were riding through the twisted drops. That said, it is the least scary ride in the park, but it was still quite a thrill. Next up is Die Gesengte Sau, a bobsled coaster by manufacturer Gerstlauer. This ride is not super thrilling, maybe less so than Dizzy Mouse in fact, but certain parts of the experience were very weird, and they made the ride uniquely amusing. The first weird thing about the ride was the loose article policy, or lack thereof. I accidentally brought a water bottle into the queue, and therefore onto the ride. If I was really quick, maybe I could have put it on the opposite platform. But Dizzy Mouse's system suggested that you couldn't leave things there. There were no cubbies on either ride, so I ended up taking the bottle onto the ride. This one's not super fast, doesn't even reach 40 miles per hour, so it was not a struggle to hold onto the bottle. But that is the only time I've ever brought a true loose article onto a roller coaster. Granted, I know people who did that on a ride that goes triple the speed, that being Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, due to that ride's atrocious policy of either using paid lockers or taking the risk. Ideally, no roller coaster loading area would be designed without cubbies, but alas. The start of the ride is a dark ride, and that's kinda crazy. You see farm animals, some physical, some on screens, and they send you off on what I believe is a race. There's that traffic light kinda like what's on Top Thrill Dragster, warranting another comparison. On that ride, the main roller coaster begins with a powerful launch right after that traffic light. This one is a standard chain lift hill, so you don't exactly zoom out of the room. And it's kinda funny that it's meant to be a race to some degree, even though you just start super slowly, because the ride model does not lend itself to that kind of theme. I don't know much about German, so I don't know if there's more to the story that's going on when you're in that dark ride portion. I know the ride's name means the road hog, evidently a pun on the fact that a hog is in a car driving in the dark ride portion. Now for the actual ride. It starts like a wild mouse with small sharp turns, but there are many drops. Some drops go through a barn structure, others twist around as they go down, but none of them are all that thrilling. There's no extreme forces, it's very much a family coaster, but I found all of the drops a lot of fun because of how tight they are. This ride takes up very little space, with the track essentially looping around the little space it has several times as you slowly make your way back down to the station. At one point, I thought the ride was at the final brake run, but there was still one more loop. Another fun thing about the ride space It's right next to the ride Black Mamba, which we will get to later. The gesengte is a fun family coaster that gets a ton of mileage out of the plot of land it's on, offering a very fulfilling ride experience. Its theme and locker policy are a tad weird, and it's hardly more forceful than Dizzy Mouse, but it is the slightly more thrilling coaster of the two. But now, it's time for the flat rides. The least scary flat ride I experienced was somehow Rotor, or Magischer Rotor. It's a standard booster flat ride. However, booster flat rides are arguably the scariest in America. At this one park, it's only 5th, and this one is way scarier than the ones I've done in the US. So on its own, booster flat rides send you flying at high speeds, flipping you upside down many times, and holding you at the top for a long time as the people below you board on the other arm. This is all awesome, and the views from up here include the lively Prater and the gorgeous city of Vienna. So yeah, the ride is great and wildly thrilling on its own, but this particular experience had 2 key issues that made it especially scary. First, it was cold. I went to the park in late December, and the roller coasters don't go that fast, so I felt just fine. On this ride, I wore my gloves, and I still came off with an immediate need to run inside for a few minutes. That's not unique to this flat ride, of course, but the way this ride was run certainly was. I was honestly nervous about boarding the attraction after some of the things that I saw. First off, there was no employee at the loading area when I arrived. I had just seen people leave the ride, and it took 5 minutes before a man came up the stairs. Weird start. Then, I gave over my loose articles. I had to put them in a plastic bin, and he then locked them in a locker. That was kind of weird because seeing real lockers right next to the ride but not being able to actually touch them is not something I've seen in any park before. The operator opened and closed the main lockers, and that was all well and good, nothing was stolen. But this is not the weirdest part. Before boarding, the operator seemed to put an air pump into the side of the ride, and the seats did not open until after air had been put in. Then, he removed the nozzle and loaded us in, and we were on our way. The ride worked fine, no issues, but once again, we could not get out of the seats until the nozzle was put back in. I have never seen a nozzle put in to force a ride to open, and I have to wonder if it's part of the design. American boosters don't have that, but this feels like it must be intentional because there was already the hole in the side for the nozzle to go in. It's a tad inefficient, and it makes the ride feel way less safe than it otherwise would have. But fortunately, it is safe, so this element only added to the thrills and made me think it's one of the scariest rides I've been on, and yet only the 5th scariest at the park. 4th scariest is Turbo Booster, also known as the King, also known as King-size Turbo Booster, and a few other variations. This is another booster flat ride, and while it operated much more smoothly than Rotor, this one is a much more thrilling ride itself. There is one simple reason for this, and that is the seats. This ride still has the 2 seating areas on either end of the enormous rotating arm, but the seats spin in a different direction on a different axis, and they are connected to larger rotating mechanisms. Therefore, the seats flip around by going left or right while they spin you around on a different axis. It's never forward or backward, but it's always insane. And when you stop at the top, you continue to spin around. The result is a stunning 360-degree panorama of Prater and Vienna, and the slight rocking in the seats makes it feel just a bit more precarious. It's an awesome yet terrifying breather in the middle of some of the most forceful and exhilarating spinning and flipping on any flat ride I've done. And yet, we're not even close to done with Prater's rides. 3rd scariest is Tornado. Just from off-ride, this is one of the most mind-bending flat rides to look at. The ride vehicle is hung from what looks to me like a lightning bolt, and the arrow on the end of it looks like Kennywood's logo. The cables holding the vehicle to the bolt move in a way that looks so unnatural, and I'm kinda confused as to what makes the ride vehicle flip. It's a spectacle to watch, but also quite horrifying. While on the ride, you get these same thrills as a booster ride, but you change direction and speed a lot more. You'll swing forward and backward, slowing down at the apex, and it's a coin toss where you'll flip each time. It's just crazy. This one is maybe not as fast or exhilarating as the previous 2, but it's not like anything I've done in the US while the other 2 are. However, the top 2 are the real reason I made this video. The 2nd scariest ride at Prater, somehow, is Black Mamba. This should be number 1. It's my favorite ride in the park, and in a way it is the most thrilling, and I want to tell you why it should be on any flat ride fan's bucket list. The experience is like a booster flat ride once again, but even more insane. It's like Booster 2.0, not least because there are 2 different arms. As a result, the movements and speed changes are even more unpredictable than Tornado. Let me describe 2 common sensations you'll experience in the ride. Scenario 1. You complete a full flip, slow down just long enough to realize you're super high up, then get absolutely yanked back to ground level at a breathtaking speed. Scenario 2. You are upside down for multiple seconds, reach the top, get gorgeous views of upside down Vienna, and then get absolutely yanked back to ground level at a breathtaking speed. There's a lot of that speeding up on this ride, and it is not like anything I've felt in any other flat ride. Additionally, this ride differs from booster flat rides because people only sit on one end of the arm. This means there's no reason to hold you at the top for an extended period, and the result is a very brief break where you can catch your breath and enjoy just a few seconds of views, before resuming the cycle in the opposite direction. The brief break feels diabolical. It ends quicker than some of the upside down moments, in fact. There's nothing abnormal about the way the ride operates, but I've never seen or experienced anything else like it. It's such an extreme ride with maybe the strongest forces and best hang time of any ride I've done. It is my favorite flat ride I've ever been on, maybe with the exception of the defunct Vertigo at Tivoli Gardens. Definitely worth a trip to Prater just for this, if you're a thrill seeker in Vienna. That said, the real scariest thing about this ride is the price. €5 for a single ride. But you know what? I rode it twice. It's that good, and definitely more extreme than any ride I've ever done in America. However, the scariest ride at Prater puts Black Mamba to shame. That ride, which is the scariest ride I've ever ridden, is known as Extasy. Epilepsy warning until the outro. First of all, this one is €6 to ride. Scary start. Second, watching the full cycle from off-ride is the most confusing thing I've seen at a theme park since the queue for Curse of the Werewolf. The ride is under a shelter with walls on the far side. Walls decorated with the kind of imagery you may expect from a carnival ride with this name. As the ride runs, there are flashing lights like strobes, spotlights, and projections, all of different colors. It's insane. And the music is even more insane. So let's just talk about the ride experience. The first thing to note is that the ride is not always the same. It seems that the movement is pretty consistent throughout the years, but the light shows and music differ based on videos I've seen. And I haven't found any other video that has a ride experience quite like mine. It began with a deep robotic voice saying, "Ecstasy," cutting off the upbeat rave-type music that had been playing before the ride began. Then, I briefly heard the theme song from 2.5 Men. For those who don't know, 2.5 Men was a sitcom starring an actor who very much fits with this ride's theme. After that theme song plays, we began spinning as a different song I didn't recognize played for a while, and this part just kind of feels like a scrambler. It picks up plenty of speed, but nothing crazy. It's just fun. Then, the arms holding the ride vehicle slowly tilt upwards until you are perfectly sideways, spinning around on multiple axes. Many POVs I saw at a fog machine, though I don't believe there was any fog on my ride. You spin both forwards and backwards as the main center mechanism continues to rotate, and the arms lift you up until you are completely upside down. You sort of phase in and out of being upside down and sideways for this portion, but things hit their absolute scariest in the next moments. Here's what I experienced. The music and lights slowed down and soon vanished. The vehicles were completely upside down, and the main mechanism continued to spin. I heard the same robotic voices at the beginning, and the vehicles were fully upside down for what felt like half a minute. I think it actually was pretty close to that long, and let me tell you, this terrified me. The blood rushed to my head, and I struggled to breathe through my nose to the point where my brain told me that if I didn't do something, I would die on this ride. That might sound hyperbolic, and it certainly was relative to the actual situation, but simultaneously spinning around and being hung upside down led to that thought entering my head. I was scared, and that very rarely happens on theme park rides for me. Mind you, nothing I've ever done before or since going to Prater holds you upside down even close to the amount of time Extasy did. But guess what? The ride's not over yet. We still have a third of the ride left, and it's about to get weirder. The ride sorta does the reverse of what it just did, slowly lowering the arms back to the original position this time, still spinning you right round though. The music changed to another song I didn't recognize, and the party vibe continued thanks to the crazy lights and loud audio. Once we were back in the starting position and just spinning around, we heard a song that repeated the word finale, though in a more German pronunciation. And it was a very fun way to close it out, I thought. The ride was still not quite done. We heard the robot voice say ecstasy a final time, and as we slowed to a stop, the song changed to The Blue Danube, a famous waltz composition you've definitely heard before. This song playing as I regained my sense of up and down made me think I was going to wake up in a straitjacket. It's such an insane way to end the ride because it's so calm and graceful, following a thrilling and terrifying experience. I love that they end the ride with that, and the ending has been the same in every video I've seen. So that's the end of the ride. It takes long enough to slow down that once you depart, you're not dizzy, or at least I wasn't. But once I got off, the first thing I did was ask the other members of my party if they were okay. I figured they had been scared the same way I was, and that assumption was correct. I have never asked anybody if they were okay after a theme park attraction before. Not even the worst Vekoma SLCs made me feel the need to ask that. This ride is just a different breed. In America, I knew theme park rides could be super fast, provide strong forces that might make you gray out, and even give you a stomach-dropping sensation. But there's nothing like ecstasy. The music progression makes the experience feel like a masterpiece of emotional storytelling, even though it's mostly just a rave. The flashing lights are elaborate, and the dizzying speed combined with the sustained periods of being held upside down are simply the most frightening sensations I've ever had at a theme park. Black Mamba is a bit more fun, and it is my favorite ride in Prater, if not the world. But Ecstasy is the scariest ride I've ever been on, securing Prater as the scariest amusement park I've ever been to. But you know what? I loved every second of it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment down below your thoughts on Prater and any questions you may have. Subscribe for more theme park videos. I'll see you next time.